we're practically done for today. 15 years ago, I stopped general reporting and started to focus my reporting on digital technology. And a lot of my peers and fellow journalists at the time said to me, "Oh, but you're going backwards, you're going into niche reporting." Yeah, I think we can all agree this area is not niche. So I want to say thank you to BEUC for organising today's event. And I will hand over the floor to say the final words and wrap up for our day to Monique Goyens, the Director General.
Thank you very much. And I know, like Alexandre said, we are not used anymore to physical conferences. We are all exhausted, so I try to be as short as possible, promised. But the bad news is, I would like to stress something. So I have been asked to give a few concluding remarks by Ursula. But there is one thing that I have not heard enough, or three things. We have spoken a lot about Data Act, Data Governance Act, AI Act, but I'm working on European Health Data Space, open finance, digitalization of energy. This is not an elephant in the room, it's a zoo in the room. So really there is so much going on there, and there is, the problems are the same, but they are just multiplying with even more enforcement authorities that don't have the geeks, that don't have the technologists, and that need to regulate a very sensitive market, which is finance, and which is health, and which is energy. So it's really important that that makes part of the conversation. Now, coming back to my remarks, so it's not exhaustive, of course. I just would like to highlight a few notes that I have taken, listening to the different panelists and speakers. First of all, I heard Mrs. Vestager say, when markets fail, regulators should not stay on the sideline, they should create the level playing field. And she did like that several times. And this is really key. This is really key. And for me, the lesson there is, and that is not yet really taken, don't rely on industry-driven regulation. Too much self-regulation, too much co-regulation, too much standards that rely on industry. Let me give you an example that we have become aware of last week. European Central Bank is rolling out the Digital Euro project. They are, for the moment, setting up prototypes on user interfaces. The user interface on e-commerce has been entrusted to Amazon. So the user interface on e-commerce for the Digital Euro is being granted to a company that I think the Commission is already enforcing cases against, and they are going to be the fox in the hen house. So this is something that regulators should refrain from doing if they really want to have the trust of the people. Second point, second lesson, and that some holy cows have been put to the sacrifice today. For example, the focus on disclosure. So disclosure and let the informed consumer beware and make his informed choice is a thing of the past. Policy workers are now slowly waking up on this, but still we have policy workers who still say disclosure is key, certainly in the financial services area again. So just have the political courage to ban when it's bad. Not just to say, let the person be informed. And I very much liked what Sam said at the beginning of this afternoon. Compare digital to food. You don't expect people to choose between the safe and the unsafe food, or between the safe and the unsafe toy. People expect those things to be safe. Well, the digital market should also be safe. You should not just be able to tick what you find the safest solution. And that, I think, is a very, very rich comparison. Another holy cow has been killed, where being vulnerable becomes, in fact, the new normal. Being vulnerable is the average consumer, and certainly in digital markets. What has also been mentioned very, very often was how can we make legislation effective? So that it doesn't just remain a beautiful piece of paper or a paper tiger. And there we have spoken about game changers, the reversal of the burden of proof. That was certainly something that has resonated quite repeatedly. But also, for example, about the role of technical standards, technical standards will have a huge role, certainly in AI. And there it has been mentioned that we need to change the governance. And I liked the nervousness of Hans when you said a software engineer that is going into psychology or into even technological solutions. This is something that is not the right thing to do. We need to change the system of the governance of standards so that those who represent and who understand consumer interests or consumer behavior or consumer biases can indeed provide input into the framework. has also been repeatedly mentioned that we need a global approach, we need international cooperation, we need transatlantic cooperation because digital markets are global. Shosanna also, in her very dense speech, I mean, every word was important in that speech, very difficult to follow. It made it very clear that it's also not just a consumer matter. A consumer who is in their bubble is a citizen who is in their data bubble. So there is really, I call it a permeability between the market, and the democracy and the society. So this is very important. Has been said also, enforcement is the proof of the pudding. So I hope that you have had as much brain power reception as I have had. It was a very, very rich event. I would like, first of all, to thank Jennifer for your brilliant moderation. So thank you very much, Jennifer. There were quite some assertive panelists there, but you kept the discussion civilized and to the point, so that's a great achievement. Thank you also for the amazing speakers and panelists who have been accepted to join the conversation. And as I said, the brain power was really very intense today, and I hope that you have benefited as much as I have of this really rich and creative brainstorm that has taken place during the whole day. I would also like to thank you. You have been very courageous. You have, been listening. You have stayed until the end, at least you. And you have also been very dynamic in your exchanges during the breaks. I would like to specifically thank the members of BEUC who have joined this audience, not only for being here, but also you are working with us. You are bringing your expertise to our work, your evidence to our work, and it's thanks to the BEUC members that we can be the reality checkers, like Mrs. Vestager said this morning, in order to provide and to contribute to the legislative work. So that's certainly very important. And of course, you can imagine, finally, how proud I am to have such a team. Organizing such an event is, of course, something that requires a lot of talents. Graphic design, the concept of the agenda, reaching out to the speakers, catering. We are the first clients of this room, so there has been some hiccups, but still we needed to be the pioneers here, so we were a little bit nervous. So our digital team, our consumer rights team, our communication team, under the leadership of Ursula, I don't name all the names because I will forget some of them, but they have done an amazing job in setting up this event, and I think that they really deserve a round of applause by the audience. And I don't know whether you know, but this event is some sort of the end point of a project on digital fairness and consumer vulnerability that we have implemented and carried out parts of our team over the last 2 years. But when I say end point, it's a little bit biased because, of course, what I understand today is that it's more that our project is contributing to the generational change that Sam mentioned in his speech earlier this afternoon, because we need to reboot our thinking about how digital markets need to be regulated. And although I hear very often that, what is lawful or what is regulated online offline should also be regulated online. To some extent, listening today to all the presentations, I think that consumers need even to be better protected in digital markets than offline, because their vulnerability is much more, let's say, exacerbated due to the nature and the characteristics of digital markets. So they don't obey to the same paradigm, so you need to reinvent consumer protection in digital markets. Most of us today are convinced that this change is taking place. I heard a lot of optimism, and I was also very surprised by the optimistic response to your question, Jennifer. But now, of course, this is, we are being convinced that's a good thing, but now we have to convince those who are in charge, the policymakers, the legislators. That might be a little bit of work ahead. Let's start maybe tonight. But first of all, I wish you a very safe trip home. Thank you very much for attending. Thank you.